Welcome back to Arnason Sports. I'm your host, Noel Arnason, for All Talk Canucks. Tonight, the Canucks return from their All-Star break to take on the Vegas Golden Knights on the road. Um, Quinn Hughes will not be in the lineup tonight, according to Rick Tocchet, which begs the question, why was Quinn Hughes being considered to go to Boston to join Team USA for the final against Team Canada in the Four Nations if he's not even ready to go tonight? Of course, Quinn Hughes apparently told the USA coaches that he wanted to go, that he was going to go to Boston for the last game, but of course, then he didn't get medically cleared to go. And so I think there's a conversation to be had on what's going on. Why does Hughes think he can go, but then uh, the Canucks are saying you can't even play tonight because you're still injured. The biggest thing you want to worry about is keeping Quinn Hughes happy. You don't want him to get upset because he only has 2 years left on his contract, and you don't want him to just book it for New Jersey when that's over. So you have to do whatever it takes to keep him past these 2 years, re-sign him, but you also have to keep him happy now so that he's like, okay, the Canucks let me do this, that. I have my freedom. I can represent my country. I can do this, that. And if if he gets unhappy at the Canucks for not letting him go to the Four Nations, that impacts up like re-signing him because it leaves a sour taste in his mouth, and you don't want that for a player of Quinn Hughes' caliber. He is the best defenseman the Canucks have ever had in their history. He's already broken numerous records for the Canucks for defensemen, and he won the Norris Trophy last year. He is the best defenseman in the league, or the second best defenseman in that league. It's him and Makar are the two best, and then you can't the Canucks can't afford to lose him because they'll immediately go into a rebuild if you lose Hughes because you lose the biggest part of your team, the best player on your team, and it would send them down a spiral, and you can't afford that. Elias Pettersson suffered an injury in the Four Nations break and is now day to day. There was a photo of him posted in the Team Sweden locker room in an intermission of him icing his knee. We all know that he has gone through tendonitis last season. I'm assuming he's dealt with it most of this season. Uh, is now the perfect time to rest him for a couple weeks to let him sort out this injury and hope that when he returns that he is back to the form we saw before the All-Star break last year. He hasn't been himself this year yet. This last year or so, he has been uh, a different player than what we're used to, and a lot of fans aren't happy with him. They don't like the contract that he has. They don't like the way he's been playing. I think he doesn't get enough recognition for his defensive game because his defensive metrics haven't dropped at all. He is still a really good center defensively, but you you don't pay him 11.6 just for his defensive game because there's lots of third line centers in the league that are good defensively and don't make $11.6 million. They make $4 million, right? And so you're paying for that offense too. And if he's not producing offensively, then he's not fulfilling his contract. And there's always lots of talk about trading him and doing that. And if you just want to reset it, even if it's a mental problem, if you want to reset it, you sit him to let him deal with the tendonitis, the knee pain, or whatever injury that he sustained at the Four Nations because they haven't released what it is yet. But also reset him mentally so that he comes in with a fresh mind, and hopefully you can bank on him returning to his form. Because if not, then you're still gonna receive the Canucks are gonna receive a lot of criticism from the fans for the way he's been playing. Uh, Kevin Lankinen was assigned to 5-year contract, $4.5 million AAV, I believe. Amazing contract for the Canucks. I think he's very underrated, and of course, the first 2 years of the contract, it's a no move, and the last 3 years are a no trade clause. So there's 15 teams on the on the no trade list. So if he regresses in those last 3 years, you still have a decent amount of teams you can work with to try and make a move. But I don't think anyone's worried about moving Lincoln in the way he's been playing this season so far. He's put the Canucks on the back. Like, just imagine where the Canucks would be if he wasn't there. Like, I don't think they would be anywhere near close to a playoff spot. He's really picked up the slack for a lot of the team, and especially with the way Seelovs performed at the start of the year. If you had the rock with Seelovs as your number one starting goaltender up until this point, I don't think the Canucks would be in a very good position, to say the least. Obviously think Seelovs is a very good goalie. We saw what he could do last year in the playoffs, but he didn't exactly impress me at the start of the season when he did start a couple games. And going with Seelovs should still be an option in the future, but as for now, Lankinen is the clear number one goalie. Demko, I never thought there would be one, like, after last season, the year before, I never thought there would be a time where Demko wouldn't be the starting netminder for the Canucks in their contending years or with this core assembled, but Lankinen should at least be probably the clear-cut starter for the rest of the season. Demko, before he got injured again in that last game before the Four Nations break, I believe had a 3-1 or 4-1 record, and a shutout. Like, he looked like he was getting back to himself, but Demko has always had those injuries, and so you always worry about injuries. It seems like a lot of players, once they get injured once or twice, that they always consistently stay injured, and you can't have your starting netminder constantly missing time. And I think that's why they did sign him to 5 years, because normally you don't sign a backup goalie to a 5-year contract unless you plan on him being the starter at one point, or you know that, hey, Demko's probably going to miss 25 to 30 games each year due to injury or this or that, and we need a solid backup netminder that can step in for half the season or X amount of games and still have a good chance to post a good save percentage and give the team wins. And I think that's exactly what this contract does, because even if you have Lankinen on that deal as a backup, I still don't think it's a bad deal. But talking about contracts, you have to talk about Besser. The contract talks, apparently, according to Rick Dollywall, that Besser and the Canucks are nowhere near a contract extension yet. Each side knows what they want. They just aren't able to meet in the middle yet, which begs the question: do you want to trade Besser before the deadline or before July 1st for prospects or whatever you can get with him, if you can't sign him to what the Canucks think is a reasonable contract for him? The Canucks will have $10 million in cap space to sign two forwards next season, according to Satir Shah. He's accounted for 21 players, including Lekermacki, Wander, DPD, buyouts, and salary retention. So they can sign Besser with that $10 million. That'll be enough to sign him. But will need to clear more money to do anything beyond that. And if Besser's going to eat up 8 million of that, is it worth signing him? Because he's going to want 7 or 8 years, right? So if you let's just say you sign him to an 8 by 8 contract, that I as much as I love Besser, I don't think he's worth the amount that he wants. His production has slowed down for goals. He's oftentimes looked like Pettersson slow out there. There's not a lot of speed to his game, and although he takes a lot of slack, uh, he's still a valuable part of this team. But 8 years for Bess, or sorry, 8 million for Besser, or 7.5 or 7, um, is an overpayment for sure. Because for $8 million, I think there is a decent amount of forwards that you can get, wingers that provide more than Besser does. And 8 years for a guy that seems like he's gone slower every year he's been in the league also. So each year he's regressed with the speed, and I don't know how in 4 years, 34 years, how much slower he's going to be, or if he's going to be the same speed he is now. But he's not the fastest guy right now, and I can't imagine he'll be getting really any faster. And so there's been talks that apparently Jordan Kyrou is on the block for the St. Louis Blues. And do you want to trade Besser, or just in general trade for someone like Jordan Kyrou, as he seems like someone who is the ideal winger for Elias Pettersson. And he still has speed left. He's still, I wouldn't say he's old, but he's not young. He's in that range where he's still in his prime, but he can still play for 5+ years, right? And he has the speed, he has the size, grit. He's still able to bury goals. And I think, I don't know about trading Besser for Kyrou, but I think trading for Kyrou would be a great move for the Canucks. And if you can get Besser for Kyrou, think think I would trade Besser for Kyrou. And if you can't reach it, you bet you don't want to lose Besser for nothing. I know he wants to be in Vancouver. He's loved his time here. This is where he wants to re-sign. But if you can't sign him to an extension because of what he's asking, then he obviously has to go. And there's lots of talk always about him going back, or not going back, but him getting traded or signing in Minnesota because that's where he's from. I just don't think that Minnesota is really willing to give up any of their top players for Besser, right? Like, of course, we're talking. There's Kaprizov is their untouchable. I don't know what it would take to get Joel Eriksson Ek, and they have lots of good younger players. I just think they're not gonna give up. The Canucks are gonna have to give more than what they're gonna receive, right? Like, you're gonna have to put in a first round pick or this or that in order to get one of the Wild's top wingers back, like Matt Boldy. Oh, I think he's a winger. So, it's gonna take a lot to get someone from the Minnesota Wild for Besser, just because, like I said, he's having down year. Normally, when you're entering your final year of a contract and you're looking for an extension, you normally play better. Like, you play better that season, right? Like, we saw Pettersson last year before he got signed, just playing at an unreal rate, just putting up points like tomorrow. And normally after they get signed, then they regress a little bit to what they were before. But for Besser, he hasn't, for it being a contract year for him, he hasn't been playing the way he was last year or the year before, right? So last year he was amazing for the Canucks. Like, no one was unhappy with Besser. In the playoffs, I think he deserves a lot more recognition than he got. Uh, Hat trick against the Nashville Predators in the playoffs, and had a couple other clutch goals, and um, that's why we love him. That's why uh, a lot of fans have his jersey. That's why you want to keep him rostered on the Canucks, but you can't resign. You can't overpay for a guy like Besser when there's better and younger options uh, for people like that, or for wingers and whatnot. So, but moving on, you can't re-sign Besser to an 8x8. I don't think that'll age really that well. I think Besser's still worth 6.5 max, and I don't think I would sign him any longer than 6 years either. But yeah, moving on. Talking about the Four Nations, Team Canada, of course, wins. Um, I think the Four Nations was a success. Like for a tournament that they created, um, in a record amount of time. You can't. It's way better than any All Star break any All Star game ever. Like the the Team Canada Team USA rivalry is one of the best rivalries in the entire world, and that first game between Team Canada and USA, the three fights, of course, JT Miller was in one. Um, it's just unreal. Like I love to see stuff like that. And each player on each side has so much patriotism. Like they're all, as Hagel said, they're all playing for the flag, right? And it's just it's unreal to watch. Players put it all on the line for their country. In a tournament where uh, it's not like it's Olympics, right? It's not You're not fighting for a gold medal. It's not the Stanley Cup playoffs, right? It's just some tournament that they put together, and it's still at international stage, right? But they're putting it all on the line for something. I don't think the Four Nations will probably happen ever again, of course, because NHL players will be allowed to play in the Olympics, starting this year or whatever next year, or the next 2026 Winter Olympics, and then Bettman announced that the World Cup of Hockey would be returning as well. So those two will be rotating every 2 years or so. Um, so for something that probably won't be around, it was just amazing, a total success. Better than, like I said, better than all star breaks ever. And on Team USA, like the Kachuk brothers, they're so entertaining to watch. They bring so much. Like, of course, I'm always cheering for Team Canada. Like, I'm Canadian, but watching Brady Kachuk, it was just he's an amazing player. There's the goal scoring with his physicality and whatnot. It's just amazing to watch, and um, of course he's Otto's captain. But I would love to see someone like that on the Canucks, as he's someone you hate to watch, or sorry, it's someone you hate to play against, but you would love on your own team. And he by far was uh one of the players I was like, holy crap, like trade for him. I don't know what I assume it would take a boatload of picks and like I don't even know who on the Canucks, like, but it would take. I assume it would take a lot to get him from Ottawa, but he, as a Canadian, I was thoroughly impressed with Kachuk. Um, I was really impressed with Binnington in the final, or the the final game, I'll call it. Um, those saves at the end of the third period and in overtime. After he kind of folded in the third period against Finland. I was pretty worried to face USA again, but he is such a clutch netminder, and of course he won Game 7. He won a Stanley Cup in Boston back in 2019, and um, so he has familiarity winning big events in Boston, and he just uh, I was telling all my friends, everyone I know, that I was worried with Binnington in net for this final game, and he just blew it out of the water, and it was great to see. Uh, it was for like I think a lot of Canadians were worried about Binnington being that. A lot of Canadians were talking bad about selecting him. Why is Binnington the starting netminder? Why didn't you take Logan Thompson? Binnington's washed, this, that. And he comes out for the final against Team USA and he just blows everyone out of the water, right? Like I think every Canadian was in shock with those saves he was making, and I think every Canadian or a lot of them send out texts or tweets saying, sorry Bennington for everything I ever said about you, because he he blew everyone out of the water, and uh, I I don't know. It was just amazing to see, but I can't wait until next year for the Olympics to return. Of course, Rick Tocchet was an assistant coach for Team Canada, so it'll be interesting to see if he gets selected to be an assistant coach again next year for the Olympics. But um, overall, the tournament was a success. Um, it was almost like when McDavid scored in overtime that it was like Crosby passing the torch to him. I still think Crosby will be in the Olympics next year. I don't see any reason why he wouldn't be, but a little bit reminds you of a little bit of Crosby in the 2010 Olympics. Of course, McKinnon played unreal as well. He won MVP of the tournament. Although he only had 4 points, which 4 points though? Like McDavid only had 5 points, right? So, he played unreal as well, and um, you have to think that Team Canada will only get better from here because uh, they're still a little bit of a younger team. Same with USA. So you think this rivalry will only go up from here, especially with the Olympics and World Cup of hockey rotating every 2 years. That these young players, as they enter their primes, as they get older, they're just gonna keep going at it, and um, the plays only gonna get better from there. So I mean, that's all I really have to say for this episode of Arnason Sports. So I hope you enjoyed. Um, as far as Canucks, of course, they are in Vegas tonight taking on the Golden Knights. Lincoln will be the starting netminder. And stay tuned for next Saturday.